from High Performance Nutrition. So if you haven't gone on, this is my shameless plug, please go onto our Instagram, Facebook, and like us. So there's plenty of info that we sort of dish out here and there about, sports nutrition knowledge bombs, and that's essentially what I want to do today, guys. So today I wanted to take a little bit of a different take of what I've done previously. I've moved up in the world and we've got a PowerPoint today, so how funny is that? Generally I like to scribble on a whiteboard, but today I thought, well, this is going to help me to jog a few of my memories, and also to give you guys a little bit of science. So often I can't rattle science off the top of my head, but I know what's going on in the research, and I wanted to be able to give you guys an insight as to where I come up with the nutrition advice that I'm trying to give you. So if you guys can hear me okay, voice projection wise, awesome. If I start to dwindle, you might need to come a little bit closer, but I can talk underwater, so hopefully that volume is okay. Okay, so we're going to do nutrition, metabolism, and the perfect diet. Pretty interesting? Everyone interested in this sort of stuff? I guess you wouldn't be here if you weren't. Okay, so it's not just part of the challenge that I wanted to go through and explain a few of these concepts. It's also in general, I think that it's a really hot topic. A lot of people are always searching for this elusive perfect diet. And when we're on a challenge, it's quite timely to say, okay, well, we're trying to implement a change. But what is that change, and how do I get there for me as a person, rather than how did someone else get there, or maybe I'll follow what they're doing. So hopefully over the course of this morning, I'll give you guys a bit of an insight as to what the science is behind the perfect diet, and also looking at a little bit about metabolism, because it's a really hot topic word. So let's kick it off. Please feel free and comfortable to jump out and ask me questions throughout me talking, guys. I tend to often rattle a lot, so if there's anything that you've got this burning passion or desire to ask, please do so, because I think other people are thinking the same sort of things. So today I thought, well, let's start with a definition of what metabolism actually is. Okay, and I'll put that slide up there, so you guys are probably going to know by now, but did anyone have a preconception of what that was before? Does anyone know what metabolism was before I put that slide up? We often talk about it. Yeah, so everyone goes, oh, I think it's used a lot in relation to I have a slow metabolism. And what happens when you've got a slow metabolism? Yeah, like you can't lose weight, it's very difficult, you feel like you're a bit sluggish. Okay, so metabolism, essentially what is it? So it's basically how our body takes in and processes and utilises food. So food is energy, and when we have a look at where we get that from, obviously the food choices that we make can be a different source of energy. So how that source of energy then relates to your cells and how your body utilises that is very different. And so my job as a sports nutritionist is to go, okay, well, what's the best type of energy or nourishment that I can get that's going to basically help your metabolism to operate as efficiently as it possibly can. So to help nourish those cells, but by doing so, what we're trying to do there is then to make your cells work more efficiently so you can go and do all the things that you want to do. Okay, so if we didn't have energy, we couldn't utilize that through our cells, and then we couldn't do exercise, for instance. So it's essentially the hub of everything that we look at. That's right. Do you want me to wait for you to put it up? Okay, cool. So in a definition form, metabolism describes the chemical reaction that occurs in the body which is vital for keeping us alive. And so right down at, obviously at that biochemical level, which is a lot of what we study in nutrition, which most people just think, we just learn about food. Well, we don't. We learn about how it operates in the system, right from that biochemical level all the way through. And then, of course, the process in how your metabolism actually converts food into energy that's used to provide that energy for ourselves. So there's a couple of things which is really important, and this is the highlight of this slide, is to say, well, guess what? Our metabolic rate is actually influenced by a certain few factors, which is why some people can have a fast metabolism and some people have a slow metabolism and some people have anywhere in between. And you could have experienced all of that throughout your lifetime up until this point. So age is a big one, okay? So the younger you are, the more you operate efficiently. Gender is another one, okay? So the difference between male and females, and I often get within a partner or a spouse relationship, and they're both on this sort of health kickstart, and one loses way more weight very, very quickly other than the other. And that causes a few fights and a few problems, and possibly a little bit of jealousy. But the trouble to remember with this sort of thing is to go, well, we're not comparing ourselves to each other because we're different. And from a gender perspective, that's a really big thing too. Weight. So metabolic rate is influenced by weight. So So the heavier you are, the more you're going to burn clearly at rest. Okay, and everyone talks about wanting to burn all this energy all the time, but they always so want to lose weight at the same time. So those two things are a little bit contradictory. When we talk about weight, it's not just weight, it's also about how that weight is composed. So it's just not that number you see on the scales. It's also then going, okay, well, how much muscle mass do you have versus fat mass? Because we know that muscle is a metabolically active tissue. So it will burn more calories just simply by being there compared to fat. Fat's not useless. It has a vascular, it has a blood supply. So it still requires energy to sit and exist and to feed in your system. But by default, if we're comparing the two, muscle has a higher energy. So it will increase your metabolic rate if you have more muscle. Often people say the more muscle you have, the more you can eat. And that's essentially where that concept comes from. Physical activity. Okay, so this is a big one that influences your metabolic rate. And not only physical activity in a formal sense, so what you guys do here in terms of your sessions, but also then what you do outside of that. What does your job require you to do? Are you a bricklayer? Do you sit at a desk? Are you a painter? You know, so all these sorts of things have an impact on how much you are influencing your metabolic rate. And then the last one is your medical health state. So if you're in a disease state, your metabolism is going to operate a lot more differently to someone else that's in a health state. With that set in mind, it's also medications. Okay, so sometimes medications cause us to put on weight or not lose as much. Okay, so they have an effect with that as well. So you can see that metabolism, it's a simple word, but a pretty complicated statement. Okay, so with this, we have to just be considerate. There's a lot going on underneath the surface, and everyone's metabolism is different to someone else's. So can I damage it? There's a couple of situations where people will come into the clinic and they'll say, look, Ange, despite me working my butt off and eating really, really cautiously, following your diet exactly to the T, I'm not losing weight. Maybe I'm just not losing as much as what I would have hoped. There's another scenario that this happens in. I'm losing weight consistently, so I've had some pretty good results thus far, but now I'm stuck, so I've hit this plateau. I can't lose any more weight. Even though I think I'm exercising as much as what I ever have in my life and probably eating better. The other scenario, you're constantly comparing yourself back to a previous version of yourself. So remember when I said, okay, metabolism is individual, it's also based on what stage of life you're at too. So I get this a lot. It's saying, you know, I'm going to compare myself back to that person that I was, but if you remember back to that person that you were younger, that younger self of you, that fitter self, you know, of where you were sitting at that one point in your life, you probably were unhappy then, but if you look back on it, you're like, oh, geez, I wish I was like that. Has anyone had those thoughts? Yeah, all too much of us. And so we're comparing ourselves back to a situation and a lifestyle that's completely different to our lifestyle right now. And our complete metabolism has changed. Okay, so maybe I did fitness competitions as well. Maybe I would have tried a little bit with dieting. I've done a few crash diets. I've done the lemon detox. Okay, these sorts of things as well. But now when I try and go back to the same thing that I did back then, I'm just not getting the same result. Anyone experience that? Yep, a couple of nods. So I'm speaking to a good crowd. Basically what we're saying, metabolic damage is this term that's loosely thrown around to say, well, that's a reason why I can't lose weight. At the end of the day, the law of physics still applies. Do we know what the law of physics is in relation to energy? No? Cool. So I might just start by saying energy can neither be destroyed or created. Okay, it simply needs to be utilised. So in essence, when we talk about weight and fat loss, you need to be in a calorie deficit. You need to be either eating less or exercising more than your current state in the current metabolism that you have in order to elicit a body composition change. Okay, I'm going to tell you why that's a little bit hard, because over the years, you guys have gotten to this point where you've probably gained fat and you've probably lost fat. And now what's happened is over the course of that time, it's actually changed the way your brain regulates your body weight. So it's not all your fault. we do actions, and we go about certain things and certain, follow certain diets, but at the end of the day, what happens is we don't take a note of how our body's actually reacting to that internally. Okay, so I'm going to try and explain this for you. So at least you'll go away with the concept of going, oh, there's so much more involved to this than what I originally thought. And, maybe I'm doing okay. So I'm going to talk about the concept of energy balance, and there's an equation that we kind of use. And when I talked about the law of physics, we need to be in this deficit. So energy in equals energy out. If you tip that scale either way, you either lose weight or you increase weight. Okay, essentially that's the simple version of it. But when I take that into consideration, I said, well, there's a couple of other factors going on. Because remember I said your body now doesn't treat you as the person that you were before. So because you've done this multiple times, physiologically, there's some other things going on underneath your skin. So a change in body store is what we've said here, and that's essentially either gaining or losing weight. Okay, when we say body stores, we've used this term because it incorporates on a cellular level what's happening with your glucose, your fluid, yes, but also your blood, and also your hormones. So not just fat and muscle, there's a whole other myriad of things that change in relation to you either storing or losing body fat or weight. So what happens to your change in your body store is a byproduct of the actual calories that you take in. So this is your nutrition, it's your food. Okay, so you're taking in nutrition. But not only that, you also need to not consider, say for instance, you pick up a food label and you say, okay, there's about 400 calories or 800 kilojoules in this item of food. And you go, great, that's how much energy I'm consuming. Now, the other thing that we don't know about when we do number crunching or when we look at labels is actually how our body processes and digests that and absorbs that. So the difference between a highly processed food and a whole food is very different in terms of what you absorb out of that same food, even though it's telling you it has the same calories. Does everyone know what a calorie is or a kilojoule? Yeah, it's a unit measure of food. So basically it's how much energy a food will contain. Does anyone know how they came up with those numbers? Yeah, so it works on that metric system, yeah. So it's all, how they determine calories as such is similar concept. They basically take an item, a certain amount of food, whether it be 100 grams of that food, and they'll combust it, they'll burn it. And so how quickly or how slowly that burns will be how much energy that food contains. But in saying that, it doesn't have any effect, or it doesn't tell us any way of how that body is processed and utilised in your body. So for instance, and I say this all the time with a couple of my contest prep clients, at some stage I needed to take away peanut butter and replace with whole peanuts. And the sheer effect of doing that, whilst they're two of the same foods, and by volume, I gave them the same amount, same calories, the process of which those two items changed meant that they were absorbing 30% less of that energy from the peanuts than they were with the peanut butter. So I'll try and explain that a different way. The more processed something is, the least work your body has to do. So the likelihood it's going to get absorbed quicker is probably spot on. And that goes with any sort of processing whatsoever. Okay, so does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, so there are certain foods that we can intake, and whilst they provide us an element of calories, we don't necessarily absorb 100% of it. And that's entirely up to our metabolism. It also comes down to things like how much what my gut microbiome is doing and how much good bacteria I have in my gut as to how much I'm going to process and absorb that food, which is pretty cool and pretty interesting. Okay, so basically our energy in needs to get minus the energy that we don't absorb. So that's essentially what we really end up taking in from an energy perspective. And then we take away all the other factors that contribute to an energy expenditure. So resting metabolic rate is one thing. Okay, and that's basically the amount of energy your body burns just by being alive. If you woke up and you sat in your bed all day, 24 hours, and we measured that, you would get an element of energy. And for you guys that have done any sort of testing, you can actually measure what your resting metabolic rate is by doing gas testing analysis. And so sometimes they pair that up with a DEXA. Has anyone done that test? Yeah, so you'll get a report and you'll see that's my resting metabolic rate. So they've given me an idea of what my body needs in terms of energy to basically function every day. So that's from a cellular level, okay, irrespective of exercise. And then on top of that, we add the thermic effect of eating. So energy is burnt by purely just eating food. Some foods will burn more energy than others because they take longer to digest. So protein, for instance, which is why I sort of bang on about protein all the time, it requires much more energy compared to a carbohydrate or a fat because it takes longer to process. So you're going to be burning more calories by ingesting a protein compared to the same amount in a carbohydrate compared to the same amount in fat. And that's just what we term thermic effect of eating. So your body has to heat yourself up to do those processes, and it's harder to digest a protein than it is a carb or a fat. And then we do physical activity. So this is what we're expending in our formalized sessions. Okay, so you guys coming in here doing your P360 strength versus your yoga versus any other session that you do formalized. And of course, this is very variable based on who you are and what you're trying to achieve. So someone could train 10 hours a week. Someone could train 3 hours a week. So you can see that that is all individual and entirely up to you. And it's something that we can manipulate. And then there's this thing called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or what we call NEAT for short. And this is this other bit. This is the bit where people just often go, how is it that I'm eating the same thing as my best friend and we're doing the same exercise sessions, we train together, yet he or she seems to be losing much more body fat than me. And that's because that other person burns lots more calories just by doing things like walking faster from their car to the gym. They could be sprinting upstairs just because they want to. They could also be a fidgeter. So you see those people, they never stop moving. Okay, so they burn more calories than anyone else. Okay, so this is this non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So you can see there that all these things contribute to your energy output and 2 things contribute to your energy intake. So we say, okay, what's your intake? Take away your output, and what do we get? And we get an elicit of a change. And then I'm going to introduce this concept. So what happens over time is when you try to elicit a change in your body stores or you manipulate your body weight based on energy in, energy out, looking at those sort of factors, basically we lose weight, and then keeping it off is actually now accompanied by an adaptive, a metabolic, a neuroendocrine, and an autonomic change within your system. So not only are you just looking at energy in, energy out, what happens, as I said, that goes on behind the surface or underneath the skin is all this other stuff that happens. So as a result of you trying to lose weight, trying to change your body stores or increasing weight for that matter, you've affected this. So it's essentially gone, I want to decrease the amount of energy that I'm eating, but at the same time, I also am dramatically increasing this, which is what I've got control over. This is my formalized exercise. So in a 12-week challenge, we limit our calories, we're on a bit of a health kick, we're choosing the right foods, and then we increase our activity because we're trying to, do a little bit more sessions, fit a little bit more into our working day. And so by doing those 2 things, what happens is underneath the surface, it actually leads to decreases or increases in other areas without you even knowing. So this is the simplest type of formula I can give to you guys without going way above science-wise for you guys to even understand. But just know that every time you make a change to do something that elicits an effect in terms of changing your body composition, you set up a cascade of changes that's going to happen somewhere else. And that over time is what we term adaptive thermogenesis. And that's what where my job becomes really interesting, because I try and fight this each and every time. Particularly if you're lean and then trying to get leaner. It becomes even harder because all these regulations are just upregulated basically. So all your adaptations are upregulated to stop you from basically starving. That's essentially what it's trying to do. All right. So in a nutshell, I mean, it's a hard concept to get, but I wanted to illustrate that all this sort of stuff is a little bit more in depth than what we just think. So we just think, I'll just reduce my calories and increase my exercise and I'll be fine. Like we said, that might have worked the first time, might have worked okay the second time, and by the third time, you're trying to do the same things again and you're just not getting the same result. This is why. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's a little bit more involved than what we originally thought. Okay, and then I get people that come to me and say, look, I've been eating 1,000 calories a day and I've been training 2 hours in the day, every day. And I go, great. Where do you go from there? How much can you do until you hit a breaking point, until your body goes, wow, you're not even giving me enough actual calories eaten, so energy in, to support my resting metabolic rate. So you're already in a massive deficit just by that, not even considering the exercise that you're expending through what you're doing. And so what happens then is your body goes, you know what, I'm going to slow my whole system down because this is not a cool state for me to be in. It's a starvation response. We are human beings. We will fight hard against trying to survive. And so I'm going to slow down everything I do. And you'll notice that your NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, reduces. So where you were bouncing out of chairs, rushing to do things, normal things, you might just be a little bit slower. You might do a little bit more sitting. You might choose to take the elevator. And for these reasons, you don't know why you're doing that, but your body is actually slowing you down. The other thing we do is because you're now losing body weight, your resting metabolic rate drops as well. So as I said, that one factor of metabolism was when your body weight influences your metabolic rate. So the lower your body weight is, the less calories you're going to burn at rest anyway. The other cool, tricky thing that your body does is it goes, all right, you want to exercise like that? I'm now going to be really efficient and you're not going to burn the same amount of calories in that exercise session now. So you burn less calories exercising. How's that? Well, because you're not giving yourself any energy to warrant any other performance gain. Okay, so we try and outsmart our body and it outsmarts us back each and every time. So what it does then is, even for me, when I'm doing like a macro specific plan, which is very elite sport, the changes that happen with this in mind might mean that my calculations might be out about 15%. That's astronomical when I'm talking about energies the energy I need to give you to elicit this response might even be 15% less than what you actually are doing. Okay, so really tricky. I wanted to highlight that there's a lot going on, all right? So it becomes harder each and every time you do it. It becomes harder as you get leaner, so you need to be more stringent. And then there becomes a tipping point of you going, you know what, to hell with this, it's not actually fun. Okay, and we spin back, reverse the other way. And then by default, your body goes, thanks very much, I'll set up a whole cascade of hormones so you keep on eating because I don't really like that state. And you're eating, and you know you need to stop, but you don't know why you're not stopping. That's your body outsmarting you again. Okay, so don't want to scare anyone, but you can't damage your metabolism, no. Basically, your body's going to upregulate, adapt, do all its stuff, but I've never met someone I couldn't elicit a change in. For some people, it just might take a lot longer, and we need to do a lot of things first. So metabolism is complicated. Understanding that energy balance means that we should be having a better expectation about what our body can do for us. We need to work with it as opposed to against it and try and, I often say, people come to me and say, if I don't feel like it's hard work, then I'm not doing it right. And I do the reverse. I'm like, well, no, it needs to not feel like hard work for you to consistently maintain it. So we don't have to suffer when we're talking about a body transformation change. We just need to be smart about how we're doing it to try and go, okay, I know what physiological response happens. Can I do it in a way that I get the least responses possible? We can't stop that process from happening. It will happen anyway, but we want to try and beat it in terms of the time frame of how long that happens. So those hormones have little fluctuations as opposed to big fluctuations. Okay, so losing weight won't damage it, but like I said, it gets harder as we get older. The more we diet, the more we restrict ourselves, the more we stress about it. Big one. But obviously, because of that adaptation, some people are going to be hard. It's going to be harder for some and maybe a little bit easier for others. But essentially, we're all the same on the inside. And even if your body resists the weight loss, you can still lose weight and gain muscle, and you can still dramatically change your body. As I said, it can be slow, but we want to really have that adjustment in terms of our expectations. And I said that last week. I said, you know, if you're looking to elicit a body composition change from a weight loss perspective, you don't want to be losing any more than 0.5 to 1% of body weight loss per week. Okay, over the course of that time. And it's not linear. We won't see that linearly. So sometimes over a 4-week period, you want an average of that. It won't happen exactly like that every single week. All right, so I hope that gives you guys a bit of an insight and just go, okay, well, maybe I'll just step back a little bit. Maybe I'll just let it be for a little bit and just see what I'm doing. And so, you know, we understand metabolism now, and we go, okay, well, I'm not going to set my standards too high, that's fine. But also still, you need to continue doing what you're doing. So the other thing is not to derail yourself. And I think with a lot of these sort of messages that we get time in, time out, we sort of think, oh, well, why can't I get that quick fix? Why don't I do a lemon detox and get 3 kilos lost in a week? I can do that, right? Well, yeah, you can, but like I said, it's going to cause some adaptations that might make it harder for you to sustain it. And if anything, I often say, you know, what do we do if we're not searching for something else? And I think people tend to fear that if they're not actively trying to lose weight, that they're failing. And that's not a good thing at all in terms of a concept. You guys should be even happy with maintenance. The fact that you're not putting on body fat is a really good thing from a health marker. So I want to now jump a little bit more into, you know, what is the perfect diet and what do we know about nutrition? So can anyone tell me, are any of these claims true? Is there one that resonates with you? Let's look at broccoli. Broccoli's bad for you, like really, really toxic. Do we believe that? Right, so we had a bit of a chuckle. All right, interesting. Gut bacteria can control your weight. Well, I just told you that gut bacteria does have an effect on how you absorb food, so maybe. Carbohydrates trying to kill you. Yep, I think so. I think a lot of people believe that one. Dairy causes inflammation, and Easter Bunny's real. Saturated fat is bad for you. Oh, hang on a minute. No, it's actually good for you now. These are all the common messages that I've seen. I just picked a few in terms of what the media, the popular media, has said over the course of time. And these ones are just the popular ones at the moment. So all of these, how do we know if it's true or not? Okay? Do we get to a point where we go, well, what's a claim and what's actually really evidence? And how do we know the difference between the two? There's a lot of nutrition experts out there, but not a lot of people question where their credentials come from. And I've said this multiple times. I think for anyone that's either gained weight and lost it, they become an expert about nutrition. All right, and I've been doing this for a very long time, and I haven't gained weight and haven't lost weight. I've done that in the past, but I'm pretty consistent with my weight now. And so does that make me not a nutrition expert? I just don't sell a lot of books. So these claims, you know, the media really like to catch onto something and throw ideas out there because it gets a little bit more traction. Unfortunately for us, we believe what we read lots of times. So I'm not saying that, you know, the scientists are right, 100% right, because as we know, nutrition is not always an exact science. It's not. And it's evolving, and that's what I love about my job, is that, yes, things change, messages change, but at the very least, we're adopting whatever is the latest evidence, and we're running with it until we know better. Right? But for people that come out and make broad claims, essentially like anything to do with this, you need to kind of be cautious as to how much you want to believe that and whether it's going to change your pattern of eating or how you execute what you're doing. So we don't always have the best quality evidence to support the recommendations, okay? But there are a lot of other people out there that have no qualifications in it and claim to read scientific studies and go with their opinion and what worked for them, and then a lot of people tend to follow because of their trend and their social media status. Okay, so just question everything, and that's the biggest part of what I want to get across to you guys, is to say just because something claims to do something, can I have some evidence or ask questions? That's a big thing. I think we kind of just put up with going, okay, I'll just believe that because so-and-so told me. So I just want you guys to just be a little bit more skeptical about what you hear and go, well, let's just look into that a little bit more. How do we determine what's science and what is a headline, and where do we stand? So basically, the other thing is that I'll be able to find a study that supports one avenue, but I'll also be able to find a study that supports another avenue. It's actually how we interpret those results. So this is what happens over time. Science discovers objective truth. So there is a difference, and I wanted to put this up. And if you ever, My Sport Science is a great, fantastic website to go to that gives you clear information based on evidence as to what is kind of happening in terms of nutrition, sport nutrition more specifically. But it gives a nice little infogram, so stuff that we can understand. So basically we know science is knowledge, or a system of knowledge covering general truths as obtained and tested through scientific methods. So they haven't just claimed something, they've gone, okay, that's an interesting point, let's maybe go and test that out. So they said, look, we've observed this natural phenomena, we'll read up on it. Broccoli is toxic. Okay, I've observed that. Let me go and read up on it. Let's formulate a hypothesis. Is it toxic or is it not toxic? What is toxic? We'll design a study to test that hypothesis. We'll test it using rigorous experimentation. So there's a system when you come to scientific experimentation. And then we might modify that hypothesis based on the results that we found. So we might do that process all over again, and a few times. And then at the end of the day, we establish a theory based on repeated validation of results. So this is what I do, this is what I look for in terms of evidence, and when a claim is stated X causes this, I go, okay, well, can I see if there's any evidence behind that? How much truth is in that? So I can do the fog test, what I call the fog test. Is it fact, F? Is it observational, O? Or is it guesswork, G? The fog test. Every time you hear a claim, let's do a fog test in your mind. And if you need to go away and research that, then albeit, go and do it. Okay, but try and look for these sort of reputable sources of information where you might be able to find the answers without you delving and doing a whole analysis on your own. So My Sport Science is a really good one. Tim Crow, Thinking Nutrition, is another one. So if you guys want to take a mental note of those two places to find valid information about nutrition, it's a really good place to start. So the press, of course, don't really like that, we have to do all these tests and studies before we come out and say something is true. So they'll just catch on to something and roll with it. And unfortunately, from my position, I always say, anyone asks me a question, and I often say it starts with it depends. Because like I said, I'm just trying to think about everything else in terms of your metabolism, what effect that will have on you based on the person that you are, as opposed to, okay, that's going to work for me, it'll work for you. Just have the awareness, okay, what is the truth? We can figure it out. So, what is the healthiest diet? That's covered everything, but that's okay. That's my main point. There's this really cool meta-analysis that they did, probably in 2015, and they basically looked at every diet. No, I'm talking about diets for health. So what is the healthiest diet? So health population, athletic population side. And like I said, the testing stuff, there was a multitude of studies, and when you get a big meta-analysis, basically they've taken all of those multitude of studies and then they've analysed that. So this is where this paper comes from. If you want to go and have a look, it's there. But we say, well, what can we say is the best diet to elicit the healthiest response in me? And so there was a couple of things that sort of came up with that. I thought I drifted it in, but yeah, it's fine. It's fine. That's the main point anyway. But it doesn't matter. It's not good. It doesn't matter in terms of they looked at low carb diets, they looked at low fat vegetarian, vegan, they looked at a mixed balance, they looked at a paleo diet, and then looked at a stack of other diets. Irrespective of all that, there were some compatible elements between all of those diets. And at the end of the day, they basically said, okay, everything's pretty much consistent with the message of eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Pretty simple, right? And that's pretty much the best diet that you could possibly do. The thing with this is that, and this is a concept that Michael Pollan, even years before this study came out, wrote in his book Food Rules, and that's a really great book for any of you guys that are interested in just really simple concepts around nutrition that's going to contribute to health. Amazing author. I had the pleasure of going and seeing him talk in Sydney, and he's got a whole Netflix series as well now. So he's basically doing things in the way of going, okay, well, we know that a headline isn't all it's meant to be. let's go back a notch. Let's try and do it from the ground up and give people a realization that it doesn't have to be that hard. Okay, so what he's done is basically gone, I've got the most simple concepts, and this is pretty much, if you want to lead the healthiest life you can possibly lead, you basically need to eat like that. It's not hard, right? But a lot of us overcomplicate things. We absorb all these different messages, and then we end up so confused we don't know what to do. So for meta-analysis that's looked at pretty much every diet you could possibly think of, has come out and said there's a consistency with every single one of those diets. So none of them are arguing between each other. So you'll have your low-fat camp, and you have your low-carb camp, and you'll have your whatever camps and tribes that happen in terms of nutrition and diet. But there is one thing that they can all agree on, and that's it, in any element of any which way. Which is interesting because there's multiple ways to do things. So if you particularly want to follow a low-carbohydrate diet or a high-fat diet for that matter, as long as you're still doing that principle, you'll still be healthy as such. Right? And then, and then we can kind of go, well, we'll put the camps to rest. If you want to identify with that sort of label, no problem. There are multiple ways to do it, and you can do it like that just as long as you keep that broad perspective in check. So, why am I talking about this sort of stuff? Well, basically what we looked at is in the last year, 46% of Aussies have tried to lose weight. It's a lot of people. So I want to get a show of hands to see if we can split the room and see if we've got 40% here. In the last year, has anyone tried to lose weight? Maybe a bit over 46%. Yeah. So there we go. This is why I'm talking about this. And good on us. We're having a crack. We think that losing weight is going to make us healthier. A lot of evidence to suggest now that weight is not any indication of what your health status is, which for me is such a wonderful concept because everyone's so dependent on or hell-bent on what those scales say and how we reflect on that. But in actual essence, if we spent more time investing in the habits and the behaviours that are going to lead to health, that's going to be much more applicable to just losing weight. So when people lose weight, they don't automatically result in being healthier. So we tend to look for things that we deem are healthier. And so for a lot of us, we believe that we have to spend a lot because it's a healthier product. And food companies capitalise on that. So it's all rigged in terms of that food system. They don't actually care too much about your health. But what we do is we go, oh, we know it's important as a nation. We're kind of tipping over on the overweight side. So I'm going to try and buy a product that looks a little bit healthier for me. And we're doing the right thing. Unbeknown to us, we are, okay? But we need to remember that those products might not be nutritionally superior to any other common products. Okay, so I just want you guys to remember that you don't have to spend a lot of money to eat healthy or to be healthy in that instance. Okay, so marketing claims, we always use emotive marketing. This is in the supplement industry, but also in the food industry. Okay, so it will pick up a packet. Most of the time when I looked at the reasons why, there's many reasons why people choose to eat certain foods, but a big reason was what it says on the front of the pack. So that visual perception, companies know that, and so that's what we're going for. So we don't have a lot of time when we're shopping. We don't have a lot of time in general in life these days. So when we go into the supermarket, if you've got two products side by side and one has a health tick, what are you likely to pick? If you're weight conscious, trying to improve your health, which most of us are trying to do. So I just want to, dismiss that sort of fallacy and say, well, does a healthy diet need to be expensive? And this is literally a Twitter post that came up yesterday from SDA to say, and if you want to go and have a look at the link, it's an excellently written article. It's saying, like, is eating healthily expensive? And the perception is that, yes, it is, because we pay more for these health items or health foods. So the studies actually are telling us that 29% of the food dollar should be spent on fruit and veg, okay, in order to achieve the recommended serves. What are the recommended serves for fruit and veg today? 5 and 2, 5 serves of veggies, 2 serves of fruit. That's for health. I'm not talking about performance or athleticism, health. So we're currently spending 10 to 15%, which is totally true because I think the other stat was 4% of the population are achieving the recommended guidelines for eating fruit and veg. Okay, so that's not, outstanding to me. I actually would say that that's entirely true. Whole grain cereals, lean meats, poultry, fish, eggs, milk, cheese and yogurt, everything that I put in your pantry list was also less than what they expect people to be spending on. So where are you spending your money? is the discretionary items. Okay? Alcohol, big one. Takeaway foods, burgers, pizzas, anything that you buy in terms of not creating yourself is a takeaway food. And sugar sweetened beverages, so obviously soft drinks and things like that, juices, cold pressed juices, so anything that's, labelled in terms of a sugar sweetened beverage doesn't necessarily just allude to soft drink. It can be natural juice as well. So really interesting. So when we looked at all of that, we kind of went, well, if you just spent on the foods that we're trying to tell you to eat, it would actually be really quite affordable. So what do we do? If you've ever bought, this is an interesting list, and I want to know what's in your pantry, basically, because these are some really interesting items that people often term are healthier, but nutritionally they're actually not. So I've said, okay, well let's do a couple of health swaps if you've got a budget in mind. And so once again, labeling, emotive marketing. So let's have a look at the claims of these. So we've got your pink Himalayan rock salt, which everyone says, oh, it's got to be healthier for us, doesn't it? Who told us that? Why did we start eating this? Why did it start appearing in our supermarket shelves? It was popular. And so the food service went, right, we're going to go on a bandwagon and we're going to tell you that it contains naturally rich in minerals and nourishing, something, I'm going to source it so I can't read that, something about it being so nourishing for you. Right. Must be healthier for me. Got to get that one. Coconut oil, big one. Is it healthier? The label tells me it is. Dr. Bronner, oh, a doctor's endorsed it, must be good. Whole kernel, rich and nuttier flavour, all in one. It's got a US organic label on it. Must be healthier, right? Activated almonds. Thanks, P. Evans. That's what I eat on a daily basis. So all these sorts of things, remember it often, if we're getting our evidence from the front of a pack, it's kind of going to be anecdotal. And a lot of these massive claims haven't been researched. They haven't been put through that scientific rigor, what I showed you before. Right? And yet they're allowed to be out there, and yet we throw money at these sort of products. So, activated almonds. If I just switch that for just almonds, normal everyday almonds, it's not a nice fancy packet, I'm going to save myself it's $2.67 per 100 grams in comparison to $8.70 per 100 grams for activated almonds. Nutritionally, equal. Absolutely equal. What about who's bought cacao powder? Who's got it in the cupboard? Much healthier. Is it? The process in which it gets done, absolutely. How much of that do we eat? It's really bitter. Not a lot. Marginal. And there's as much antioxidants in normal cocoa than there is in that. Just that normal cocoa has often been laden with lots of sugar in a hot chocolate. Same concept. You're saving yourself a packet when you do it. What about goji berries? We all love goji berries. That's another big one. Okay, not as in terms of antioxidants, on par with just your normal berries. Okay, but twice as much more expensive. Greens powder. I'm going to buy greens powder because I just can't get any spinach in my diet. But if I got spinach, instead of spending $20 per 100 grams, spinach I'm spending $1.70 per 100 grams. Eating healthy doesn't have to be expensive. Whole food first. Quinoa, I don't know for some of you guys, gluten-free, that sort of stuff, no problem. But from a cost perspective, if you're not a celiac and you can eat couscous or rice for that matter, you're saving yourself a packet. Alright, so these are the simple things I kind of just wanted to highlight and go, well, you know, even though nutritionally it has a health claim, it would seem to be a little bit healthier, it doesn't have to be that expensive because from my perspective, looking at the nutrients, they're equal or on par with something that doesn't have a health claim on it. So just be aware. Yeah. Oh, and delicious, right? expensive. And that's essentially my point. I'm not saying that, like I said, you can still buy those things, but don't turn around and go, oh, it's so expensive to eat healthy. Because that's what I get a lot of times, like, oh, it's way too expensive to eat healthy. I'm like, yeah, but we're eating health claims and we're paying for that. We're not looking at it from a nutrition point of view. So we can do things on a budget where we can. But say, for instance, someone wants to buy me macaron crusted cashews, I will happily eat those. How much cashews? I mean, cashews are up there. Love it. But okay. And that's exactly what my point was. I was saying, what determined your choice to buy that? You know, it's a label thing. We think that it's more popular and more healthy for us to be able to choose those type of foods and think that we're getting a nutritional benefit out of it when it doesn't need to be the case. So, like I said, just where you want to spend your money. Okay, so I've talked a lot about health and what's the best diet for health. And obviously, it doesn't have to be complicated, and that's why we went with the fundamentals of just having habits. Those simple habits are what really ground the fundamental basis of what you're trying to achieve from a health perspective. And then for you guys that are doing the athletic challenge, I wanted to give you a concept of what is the research support in terms of what to do to get the best body composition change. So I talked about energy in, energy out, the whole energy equation. And we alluded to the fact that it was a little bit more complicated than what we thought. But then there was another beautiful meta-analysis that came out, and it was done by ISSN, and they basically said, this is our position stand. We've gone and analysed all these diets, but instead of just looking at the diet from a health perspective, so we're not going, what's the best diet for health? We're actually going, what's the best diet out of all these for body composition or transformation change? So, like I said, I don't want to get too heavy science with you guys, but I have two papers that if you're going to ever read something, it's awesome because they give you an outlook on exactly a lot of other studies that have gone into it. So, what are their positions? What's the position stand and what came out of the position stand? So, the best body composition. So, the best body composition would allude to the fact that the most muscle that you can have with the least amount of fat. Okay, which is kind of what we try to achieve in terms of eliciting a change in a transformation challenge or something like that. And I'm really sorry for the heavy text, but I think it was really important to highlight and I couldn't read it up there, so I pulled it out. So basically, if you want to lose fat, your diet needs to be sustained with a calorie deficit. I told you that. The law of physics doesn't change. Energy can either be created or destroyed. It simply needs to be utilised. So we need to put in less and expend more in order to lose body fat. The higher the baseline level of body fat, the more aggressive the calorie deficit may be imposed. So when I said to you that 0.5 to 1% lost body weight per week, if you've got more body fat to lose, you could be tipping the scale of the 1% or a little bit above that. And if you're leaner, it becomes harder, which is exactly the case here, where slower rates of weight loss can actually better preserve lean muscle. So remember, lean muscle contributes to increasing your metabolic rate, which is all those factors we want to try and stop. We want to slow down that adaptive thermogenesis in leaner subjects. So as you get leaner, or if you're starting quite lean already and you're in a healthy body weight and you're trying to take yourself from this to a better body composition, you need to do that even slower to attenuate any changes or losses in muscle mass. When we lose weight really quickly and you're already lean to start with, you tend to, by default, your body goes, stress response, I will prefer to lose muscle mass over stored body fat because fat's my survival storage system. So it'll do that first. Diets focused on putting on weight or lean body mass have to be driven by a sustained calorie surplus. So I'm not talking about now reducing your calories. If you want to put on muscle, you need to eat more. Eat more than you're currently sitting at the moment. And it blows with the whole concept of eat till you're 80% full. So remember that mindful eating. We're going to get you guys to touch base with your hunger levels and your satiety levels, making sure you're present in those meals. And so for people that want to put on muscle mass, you need to ignore that. You need to eat over that. Slippery slope. But if that's your goal, then that's how you're going to do it based on the science. And once again, it's the source of that nutrition as well. You can't just overeat calories in general. We know that the source of that calorie, where that's from, is going to have a much different effect on your cells from a metabolism point of view than, say, for instance, a junk type of calorie. We also need to support our increased training demands and resistance training demands. And that's something where I think with lean muscle mass, I feel harsh in saying this, but I always say, are you training hard enough? So I've got an idea and a concept of what training hard is. I've been there, I've done it. Whilst I don't do it now, I still know what it's like to elicit a true change when you're trying to put on muscle. And I think people are deluded in the fact that they think they can put on muscle overnight and it's not going to take a long time, and they'll put on a stack of muscle just even if they start eating more protein. Ain't going to happen. You need to be pushing those boundaries in the gym each and every time. And that general progression, expect to be sore, because if you're not sore, then you don't facilitate an adaptation response. So I wanted to throw that in there, because obviously a lot of you guys on the challenge might not necessarily be focused on fat loss. It might be more about muscle gain. So that's the muscle gain sentence for you guys, just to keep that in mind. So what they also found, much similar to the meta-analysis on the best diet for health, was that there's a wide range of dietary approaches that can similarly be effective for improving body composition. Whether it's low fat, whether it's keto, whether it's paleo, it doesn't matter. But the one change between the body composition one and the health one was that protein needs to be accounted for first. I've got 10 minutes. Okay, thank you. Lots of fun. Okay, so increasing your dietary protein levels significantly beyond current baseline recommendations. And don't stress about the numbers, it's using your palms, remember? So the more palms of protein, make sure you get that right first, and then you might increase the amount of meals that you have, depending on what your goals are and what your needs are. But simply by doing that palm-based base of protein, and I know you guys, there was a question on the forum as well as to how many grams of protein should we be aiming to achieve in every meal? 20 grams for females, 40 grams for males. Okay, each meal. Drip feed is the best way to do it. Increasing protein significantly beyond the recommendation for athletic populations in a calorie deficit may result in improved body composition. So this is the whole scenario of me trying to get someone as lean as I possibly can with sustaining all their muscle mass. So we're taking a person that's very lean, taking them, making them even leaner, and I need to make sure that that protein is probably 2 to 3 times more than the current recommendation guideline. Never do that without a coach. And that's all I'm going to say with that. It's not something that you want to be doing on your own. The collective body of intermittent calorie restriction research demonstrates there's no significant advantage between restricting my calories day to day, so I'm in a small deficit day to day, or not doing that and doing intermittent fasting and having a whole day where I don't eat anything. At the end of the week, it doesn't freaking matter. Law of physics. It doesn't matter how you do it, just create the deficit. Okay? If it works for you to have 2 days where you're doing the fasting, that's totally fine. For most of you guys that are athletic, that are training consistently, that might bite you in the butt at some point in time, just from an energy perspective. Whatever works for you guys. Like I said, there's many ways to do it. Long-term success of the diet depends on compliance and suppression or circumventing the mitigating factors such as adaptive thermogenesis. So basically, you're going to keep that fat off and increase that lean muscle if you are able to sustain exactly what you're doing for a long, long period of time. And by doing so, you're making those small changes with that adaptive thermogenesis, not big fluctuations, which sees you really struggling with each end of the spectrum. And that's essentially what yo-yo dieting is. Okay, so small modifications over a longer period of time is what's really going to keep you guys sustaining what you can do for basically forever. And you need to get rid of the concept of going, oh, just do it to the end of the challenge. Okay, so anyone can stick to something for 12 weeks, okay? And if you do it, then do it for that time. Don't go up and down and then go, oh, I'll just go off it today, or no, actually put that in place, do that time frame, and then go, what's realistic that I can achieve and sustain beyond that as well. The other thing is obviously going back and saying there's not a lot of research with women and older populations, and also they haven't even looked at behaviour modifications when it comes to body composition. They've only looked at nutrition and exercise as interventions. Simply by changing behaviours is a really big, massive thing. I had a client come to my clinic yesterday, high-level cyclist. She went away, her sister got married in Canada, did a massive Canada trip, ate her way through Canada. Came back into my office and I'm like, you look leaner, what's going on? And she goes, well, when I returned, I had a goal of running a marathon. I said, right, so you want to go from elite cycling to marathon running? Okay, no problem. I just want to change. All right. And she goes, I got back and I thought, well, probably not realistic that I'd just run straight into a marathon. So she goes, I just started walking. I said, all right. She goes, yeah, I walk everywhere. Okay. Yeah, I pretty much walk about 18 kilometres a day. I walked last week 80 kilometres in the whole week. I went, right. She goes, it's amazing because I get to work and it's awesome. I now have so much more time in my day because when I was cycling, I'd be getting up at 4 o'clocks to go and do a ride, have to come home, get changed, and then go into work. She goes, now I just get up at 6, I've got 2 hours extra sleep, but I'm doing the same volume of exercise, I'm just walking to work. And then I'm doing something in the day, and then I'm walking home. And so for her, her whole concept of the real struggle, having to get up, having to do the sessions day in, day out, was really stressful for her. Now she just basically goes, I'm the leanest I've ever been, and I don't even feel like it's hard. So do you see the concept and the perception there? The behavioural changes that she made from a lifestyle perspective got her the best condition of her life. All right, so just it's how we look at stuff. And like I said, the research doesn't give us that, unfortunately, because not a lot of people look at behaviours. Okay, the whole fundamentals about your behaviours. So how can I transform my body? Okay, we've all seen one extremes to the ends. Eat plenty of protein. We've always thought this is basically your secrets, guys, that I've implemented within the manual that you've got. So eat plenty of protein. Eat a wide variety of fruits, vegetables, quality carbs, and healthy fats. It's not rocket science. Adjust your intake as you plateau or to prevent plateaus. Objectively assess this. I think this is the biggest difference. So basically, I'm coaching someone, they get to a point, yeah, I can't move any more weight. I'm like, okay, let's have a look at what you're doing. And sometimes I have to be hard coach hat because I'll go, right, well, what is the difference between this month compared to the last month where you were actively losing weight? And yes, you could have hit a plateau, which is fine, but really let's have a think about that. Yeah, it was my birthday last month. Okay, how's your birthday? Yeah, I probably had one too many treats with office gatherings than what I probably did the month before. Okay, great. Yeah, I got a bit sick, so I dropped my training back. And all of a sudden you start to go, aha, I think I know why you plateaued. Okay, so it might not be so evident as that, but a lot of us, and we don't do it, we do it naturally. It's not something that we forcibly sort of go, I'm lying to you, and I don't automatically think that you're lying to me. It's just that we're not aware of what the changes that we've made have contributed to you being in a plateau. So like I said, that consistency is really important. And then if you are legitimately in a plateau and you're doing everything in terms of ticking a box, you're only going to know that from an accountability point of view. So that adherence chart is really important. You can then clearly see what meals you have had, what meals you haven't had, and then over time it becomes a case of going, what can I change? What can I do consistently from here forward? So that's really important for you guys to reflect every single week. So call that nutrition review. Sometimes I do it for people that pay me, but for you guys, you can do it for yourselves. Reflect back on the week. What has happened? What could I do differently and better next time? Cycle your calories and your carbohydrates strategically, and that's got to do with your leptin and your insulin. And so this is what we talk about periodic refeeding. So the stuff, guys, if you don't want to think too much about it, it's what you get a coach to do, but I'm telling you that it can be done, and that's what we do. So remember when I said, let's put your carbohydrates after you train. There's a reason why I did that, okay? Carbohydrate cycling. If you train more, let's increase your carbohydrates, periodized carbohydrate loading. So all these sort of things, from a science point of view, I've got a reason behind why I'm telling you to do it. Do a mixture of resistance, cardio, and recovery where you guys have that sorted here. Find ways to increase your NEAT. Okay, remember that? I can take the stairs. I can park my car a little bit further away from the train station. Those activities of daily living can be increased simply by you picking up the phone and pacing every time you do that. Okay, little things like that. Develop a solid nightly sleep routine to manage your stress. Two of the things, sleep and stress, are the biggest factors when we look at diet and exercise alone. If you put that aside, if you're not getting those other two factors right, you'll never get that body composition change. Really important. Not my area of expertise, but I understand it has an influence on what we're trying to achieve. Have some self-compassion. Make sure that what you really want aligns with the life that you really enjoy, and be realistic. If it means that you want to get ripped, you need to sacrifice a ton of stuff to do that. Is it worth it? Are you going to be happier? I don't know, it's up to you guys. So the elusive perfect diet, is there such a thing? There's a fundamental truism, is that energy balance has to be negative when you do that, and can sustain your new weight, then you achieve success. It's exactly what I've spoken about the entire time this morning. So it requires a shift in your mindset, and it also maybe needs you to realise, is it okay to just let it be? Like, let's not be so intently focused on losing weight. Let's not weigh ourselves multiple times a day. Simply by doing that, that stress could be enough to make you not lose weight. Okay, physiological responses, adaptations that happen. You intently focusing on that means it'll never happen. Well, it might, but it will just be a really hard slog. Sometimes can it be? If weight maintenance is all you do from here to when you die, it's pretty freaking cool because that requires effort too. Aim for healthy, not ripped. Like I said, there's a tipping point with the balance between getting to a certain body composition that's extremely lean and what it requires you to do so, at the sacrifice of maybe your family members or your social life. In the day, if someone stood up at your funeral and went, I knew that person because they were incredibly shredded, right? It's not really a desirable trait. I can guarantee you how you feel about your body and what you look like is entirely personal to you. I don't give a shit what you look like, and neither does anyone else. Light bulb, be happy in yourself. If it means you need to be leaner to do that, then so be it, but I can guarantee you by the time you get there, if you haven't sorted all the other shit going on in your life, you're probably still going to be unhappy. Hard truths. Pick one thing, a simple health supporting habit, and work on that for 2 to 3 weeks before you add the next. Look at your 6 habits. What are you not doing consistently? That's what you need to work on for this week. Just one, that's it. Simple steps, slow progression, long term in terms of how I can manage that and sustain that over a longer period of time. Talk with people, okay, get ideas, but also in saying that, we are humans by nature want to be, feel like they belong, which is awesome, but I say choose your circle of friends wisely because they'll be enablers and there'll be people that don't feel too good about themselves and that'll reflect in their responses to you, which might not make you feel that great. I had an email from a client yesterday. She was doing amazing. Her results were so terrific and she went and got her wedding dress fitted. She sends me an email. She's like, oh my God, the stuff that this lady said to me made me feel so awful and so terrible. I don't even know if I can continue doing this. And I went, right. At what point did it become anyone else's responsibility about how we feel? So that person's words now changed her mindset and sent her off in a different direction. The week before when I spoke to her, she was on top of the world. I can't believe my results. It's amazing. I feel so good about myself. And I said to her, were you doing this just to fit into a wedding dress? Or were you getting married just to wear a wedding dress? No, of course not. Think about stuff that matters. When we're so intently focused on fat loss, we tend to lose perspective about what's really important in life. Okay, and once again, knowing that that person had the power to make them feel that way wasn't entirely great. Okay, you yourself have complete ownership over how you feel. So just choose to be what you want to be. Like I said, at the end of the day, there's multiple approaches to getting here. You need to figure out what works for you, what you resonate with, and what you can sustain. And before you adopt the nutrition trend, and this is my last slide, guys, so I'm wrapping it up. And like I said, nutrition trends, it's just a way or a pattern or a style of eating that might resonate with you. That's totally fine. Just do a few things first. And this is that science hat that I say, just, go in with an air of caution. Remove your red flags and deficiencies, and that's first and foremost. If you've got an underlying pathology that's going to limit you from feeling your best from a health marker, you need to sort that out. Because no matter what you do with your nutrition and exercise, you will always feel substandard. So you can't get the most out of something unless you know if there's an underlying pathology there first. So go get a check, get a blood test. When's the last time you had a routine blood test? I know a lot of us think about these sorts of things, a bit of an effort, have to go, I've got to fast, But if for what it's worth, if you can pull something up that you were kind of feeling crap about, then you've got some answers. That's what we want. We want answers. Control your energy intake without counting calories. Like I said, the numbers don't necessarily have any indication of how your body processes that. So be mindful of that. Use your hand portions. That's why we're looking at hand portions this time around. I adapt my education and my knowledge based on what current evidence we have. So with anything, it's all about progression. You would have seen the challenge meal plan start at one point and completely evolve to where it is now. And that's all because I adapt with science. I'm not shut off to any different theory. I'm just saying, well, what's the best to elicit the best response from this point in time? Consider your body type and activity level. Okay, that's for those athletes out there. Obviously, eating towards your body type might be a natural tendency to get a better effect. And it's possibly the way in which you've always kind of eaten, which is once again it feels like home. It's something that isn't unfamiliar to you, which means that you can consider that you can continue doing that for a longer period of time. Observe your progress and carefully adjust your intake accordingly. This is the whole reflection thing. Okay, looking back on stuff, why do I not lose weight? Well, I don't know what to do. I haven't been inside your head. I don't walk in your shoes. So write it down, journal everything from your thoughts right through to what you ate Friday night and how your workout felt, how much sleep you got. That's the sort of stuff that's going to give you an answer to that and how to adjust it moving forward. Do it consistently and do it long term, at least 6 months before you try a new trend or style or pattern of eating. So if you can't get that basic right first, you've got no hope in sustaining the new diet. Because that one's going to work for you this time. Get the basics right first, the fundamentals. Follow the nutrition trend at least to the letter consistently for 8 to 12 weeks minimum. I had a tennis player who was really high level tennis, very high energy output, that wanted to do keto. Despite my knowledge of their activity and their exercise and what their body needed, that was probably not the right thing to do. Did I tell him not to do it? No. I said, awesome, go and do it. And they came back after 1 week of doing it and they went, oh my God, my energy is so flat. I just can't get any pickup. My training's completely plummeted. And I went, awesome. And they're like, oh, you need to change my diet. What do I do? What do I follow? And I go, you're going to do keto for another 6 weeks because you haven't done it consistently. So in order to see the ramifications of anything, you need to do something for an exact period of time. And then after 6 weeks, you're going to maybe listen to what I have to say moving forward. But I'm not going to discredit what you're doing. I didn't say it in that manner, of course, clearly. Poker face. But in saying that, there's a principle behind what I'm doing. And so at the end of the day, you need to realise it doesn't matter what you do, how is it working for you? And that is the biggest question. Ask yourself every single time. I want to do something. Okay, we'll give it a good shot first. And then ask yourself, how does it work for me? Whatever the answer to that is, then change your perspective or change your actions or change whatever you're doing leading after that. So I've been told to wrap it up. So that's pretty much it. And I don't think I've got any time for questions, but I'm still hanging out. Oh, okay, awesome. Okay, well, whoever's at 9:45 skin folds, I might be a little bit late, but that's okay. I'm happy to hang out. So questions. Yes, Michael Pollan's Food Rules. He's done an amazing array of things. He's written The Omnivore's Dilemma, Food Rules, and then there's a whole Netflix series called Cooked. Amazing. Beautiful insight. Yeah. No questions. Have I stunned everyone? Are we all feeling motivated or demotivated? Yes. You know what I am.
Okay, if you do have any questions or you think of something after, just chuck in the Facebook group or email the admin email or email Ange directly, okay? It is better chuck in the Facebook group because if someone does have a question, there's probably a good chance that other people are thinking the same thing. So it gives Ange a chance to get to more people, I guess. All right, thanks for coming out. Yeah. Yeah, all right, we'll send you guys a survey.
Hopefully I haven't completely confused you all.
Hopefully you're all listening. Pop quiz.
Yeah.
Rewards.
Oh, so I'm back,
if you get them wrong.
and I'm back in 2 weeks, and we're doing cooking demo, which is so much more fun. So we get to eat stuff. Woohoo! And I'm also going to be doing a pantry overhaul, so please attend that. Come to that. It's going to be heaps of nutrition knowledge bombs.